More Albertans oppose the province's plan to leave the Canada Pension Plan than support it. That's according to a survey by the Angus Reid Institute. And for more, we're joined by Shachi Kurl. She's president of the Angus Reid Institute. Shachi, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. So this has been quite the hot topic in recent months here, but it really interesting to get a sense of how people are feeling in Alberta about the prospects of leaving the Canada Pension Plan. So give us the results on that.
Well, if you look at the total amount of support, Jacqueline, it nets out to about 36% of Albertans who say they support this plan. Far more oppose it. And what I like to look at is what we call the marginals, the people who are strongly opposed versus strongly supportive of this plan. And there you see a great deal of the story being told. Only 18%, or about a fifth of Albertans, say that they strongly support this plan. By contrast, about 40% of Albertans strongly oppose it. So nearly a 2-to-1 margin in terms of that most passionate group of people when it comes to this debate. And again, I would say that really does tell a big part of the story.
And it's interesting, too, that there is, quite a large chunk of people who don't know. They're not sure right now because there isn't all of the information that's really needed out there, is there, in order to be able to make an educated decision about this?
That's right. And so the uncertainty and the question of whether people are thinking, when it comes to pensions, nothing could be more personal. You've worked hard all your life. You want to know that there's going to be income there for you in your retirement at the end of your life. And it's not only the uncertainty, but also really the sense from a lot of Albertans that they're not necessarily sure they're going to be better off under a provincial plan that really speaks to, call it, a level of skepticism or ambivalence. And what's really important to bear in mind here, Jacqueline, is that we're seeing a lot of uncertainty or skepticism among past UCP voters. So, of course, this is UCP Premier Danielle Smith who's talking about wanting to do this, wanting to drive this forward. Past UCP voters, people who have voted for her party in the past, fully a fifth of them, say that they are really unsure, not only around supporting or opposing pulling out of the plan, but whether they'll actually be better off. Nearly a quarter say that it will make absolutely no difference. 20% actually believe they'll be worse off. By contrast, NDP voters, people who would never have voted for this government to begin with, are absolutely lockstep in their belief that this is the wrong thing for the province. They don't support it personally. They don't support it as a matter of policy.
It's interesting to get these results from your survey, Shachi, when we just had the results of from the Albertan government rejecting that bill amendment to make the results of a vote over leaving the CPP binding. So even though they're saying that they would respect the the wants of Albertans. But interesting to get some sort of a sense of perhaps ahead of that, whenever that were to happen down the road. You also ask Canadians outside of Alberta what they thought of Alberta leaving, the prospects of that, or of their provinces leaving the Canada Pension Plan, because I think maybe people thought, well, if Alberta's leaving, is that something that our province should be doing in BC or Ontario or what have you? What did you find on that front?
Well, again, there's not a lot of support or appetite really either to see people's own provinces leave the existing national plan. We asked that question of all the provinces that weren't asked specifically in Alberta about what should happen. And of course, Quebec has had its own pension plan since the 1960s. But the provinces that we did ask, people in the provinces that we did ask, were like, no, that's okay. We're good with the CPP broadly. Of course, it wasn't unanimous, but that was the overwhelming view or the plurality view in any case. A lot of people just weren't sure. I think for them, they're going, what is this about? And then when it comes to whether different people in different provinces approve of basically what's happening with the proposal for Alberta to pull out of the CPP, outside of Alberta, support is only at about 30% or 1/3 in Saskatchewan. And of course, in Quebec, Quebec, where, again, this is a province, and Quebecers have had their own plan for the better part of 5-6 decades. So that's normal for them. Saskatchewan is an interesting fish unto itself. I use that for a prairie province, maybe a funny analogy. But, you know, this is a province where people are, and certainly provincial political leadership under Scott Moe as premier have been very vocal about, well, Saskatchewan's going to do its own thing. It's going to go its own way. Yeah. And so not surprising maybe to see that level of support in Saskatchewan.